All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining us here at GenAI Live at reInvent 2024. We are super excited to have Pinecone here today. Just to kick it off, though, my name is Danielle Greshock. I am the Partner Solution Architecture Director for Worldwide Technology Partners.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. And I am still Marie Carlton for those who are still watching. And for those just joining, I lead our Worldwide Partner Core Tech team, and I'm really excited to have Pinecone here. Just a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. We can definitely answer them live. But yeah, Liam, tell us a little about yourself and Pinecone.
Yeah, so my name is Liam Morrison. I'm the Director of Solutions Engineering for Pinecone, so I lead all technical pre-sales, including partner engineering. I've been with Pinecone since May. And Pinecone is a company whose goal it is to make AI knowledgeable. So we're kind of centered by a vector database, which has evolved over the years. We launched our serverless version earlier this year in AWS. We've since added a bunch of additional capabilities, including kind of bringing the inference and embedding closer to the database with integrated inference, and a host of different features, including our assistant as well. So.
Awesome. Well, so why don't you just talk to us a little bit about, the evolution of embedding models and how really Pinecone is different from other players in the market?
Absolutely. So yeah, first, just the kind of importance of embedding models and inference. Like, that's an area I've been very passionate about. It's actually kind of what caused our company to come to being well before the wave of generative AI, which actually put us kind of in the right position when generative AI hit. When we launched the database, RAG wasn't a concept. It was not even a thing yet. So we were focused on a lot of these bread and butter use cases around candidate generation, classification, semantic search, which has been kind of our core bread and butter. And then RAG hit, retrieval augmented generation hit, and we were just kind of perfectly poised to be in the right place at the right time, and our kind of the aspects of the database that made it important, like fast retrieval, freshness, which is how do you get relevant data without re-indexing, all were in the right place at the right time. So it made it easy to kind of seamlessly integrate into what became known as GenAI.
No, that's amazing. And yeah, and with that, obviously, we, as a partner using Amazon Bedrock and all of that, how has your partnership been with AWS, and what does that look like through this evolution and growth?
So that's been fantastic. I mean, honestly, the integration to Bedrock knowledge base was something that happened before I joined, but it made it very easy. And even prior to joining, when I was a little history of me prior to joining Pinecone, I spent 9 years at AWS doing a variety of different things in the AI space. So when I was working in AWS, Pinecone was an easy way to test RAG pipelines, because you can actually, especially with the serverless, you can get started very easily, get an index up and running. It's integrated directly into knowledge bases, and it gets going very quickly. And also, knowledge bases helped with what I find to be one of the most challenging things, which is how do you generate embeddings? Like, lots of companies, and I had been talking to Pinecone over the years, and one of the things my feedback pre-GenAI was, many customers don't know how to generate embeddings. It's not easy, and it's not trivial to do. And what's happened in the last months, that's kind of the evolution, is it's getting smarter and harder at the same time. So text embeddings have been very well defined, but now we're heading into what's called multi-modal, but it's really just the Wild West of like anything that can be.
Yeah.
And not only that, text embeddings have gotten very complex in a great way. Like, text embeddings started with sentence transformers, word-to-vec, things like that. Now it's really deep in that the text embedding benchmark has 480 models in it as of today. But interestingly, in October it had 430. So it's 50 new models just since October have been added to the benchmark, and that's just ones that make it into benchmarking. So.
Wow.
So why don't you help us translate for the audience, help translate that into real use cases with outcomes, what with the evolution of these embeddings, what does that look like for a customer?
So I think everyone's pretty familiar with retrieval augmented generation, but I'll give a quick overview of that. And obviously that's evolved a lot in that what you retrieve could be from a semantic search or a lexical search, and that's one of the recent features we launched, which is, people don't care about necessarily semantic search or lexical search or graph search. They want the right answer.
Yeah.
Right.
So a lot of what you're doing is just get me the right answer. And that's where that's not so easy, in that if you give it a model number or a keyword, something that has no semantic value, then a semantic search will be less performant than a sparse search or a lexical search, as it could be known. So how do you get the right answer? And then oftentimes you might be dealing with data that's in kind of structured format, so the graph answer might be the right answer. So our goal is to make it less important about what your embedding is and just what is the right answer to feed to the foundation, the frontier model to get the right answer. So what are you feeding to Claude or Bedrock?
Right, and how does multimodal make that more complex then?
So yeah, so
more challenge. You were talking about how it's like always been around, but then also these new. It's easier, but now it's actually more complicated.
Yeah. So how I describe it is like with word transformers or sentence transformers, like you can get a book that has all of the words in the world. They exist. Yep. And then you can also get tons of documents that have semantic value. So collecting all the words and training a model is actually how a lot of the original wave of generative AI models were. Moving out beyond that, now you're talking about everything that could exist everywhere and every angle. So we now have like Titan, for instance, multi-modal embeddings was one of the first ones. We have partners like 12 Labs creating amazing models that take this content. And modalities could be, it's hard to describe modalities, but it could be audio, could be video,
right.
but video could have text in it. So now you've got this like matrix form of modalities, and how to make sense of that is challenging. So you have to take all of that data and provide it in a way that can be embedded. And that's where right now the text embedding world is rich, active, and very deep, 480 models. There is no MTEB or the massive text embedding benchmark. There's not a correlation in these multimodal environments. There's no video embedding benchmark yet. I feel like there will be very soon. And there's only a handful of video embedding models. I think that's going to skyrocket, and even just text models and embedding models go by dimensions, which is kind of think of it as a proxy for the complexity of the model. And up until recently, like a lot of the models are in the 1,000, 1,536 small numbers of dimensions. The top 10 in the text embedding benchmark right now are 4,000 dimensions or higher. So that means your vector database, which is, I guess, one of the reasons I'm here to talk, is going to be needs to be very able to handle large amounts of dimensions, large amounts of vectors. And that's the other thing, is as you process documents or videos, documents, they call it chunking, is you're taking the document and cutting it up into small things that can be embedded. Videos have very similar things, but the concepts are mathematically harder. Like you have to find the scenes or the shots, and how do you embed that? We're in the early days of that space, and it's coming out of the media world. It's an area I'm very
I was going to say, you spent years at AWS working with media companies, so you can see the potential in the future direction.
Absolutely, and there's so much interesting work being done there, but it means the amount of information in your database is going to be insane. And Pinecone's, one of the strengths they have is the ability to handle massively large scale, like billion vector workloads are interesting to us. Multi-billion vector workloads are what we find interesting. So.
No, and that was, you started answering my question as like, where is Pinecone at in this journey? Obviously, like you said earlier, that you were able to plug in very quickly when the boom came. And so it sounds like you guys are doing some really incredible work trying to simplify all of that back end and making it simpler for the customer.
Both making it simpler and handling the workloads for the people who want it complex. Because that's the hardest part about any type of a SaaS platform, is finding the right level of abstraction. And we've got multiple options for your level of abstraction. So the recent announcement was integrated inference, which is taking the concept of a dense model, potentially a sparse model, and handling the embedding. Just give us the text and we will give you the response. And we take care of the embedding, we take care of the generation of results and the re-ranking of results. That's good, but also you might just want the vector database as well. So we are laser focused on improving the vector database, adding features that are relevant to vector workloads.
Yeah, so why don't you, I know you've been talking about it, or we've been talking around it, but why are vector databases so crucial? And what are you guys doing? I know you touched on it a bit, but I would love to hear, what are some examples of the work that you guys have done to drive that?
And also, I think Pinecone has some really interesting customers. If you can name them, great. If you can't, that's okay too. But if you can talk about some of the places where you have customers who are really, pushing the needle on scale.
So yeah, I'd say I can go into some of the customers, like the interesting ones.
Or use cases.
Yeah, use cases. And that's what we found is very quickly we had all the use cases that brought us into being, such as semantic search and understanding like what types of classification you might want to do. Those were there, and then RAG hit, and 90% of our workloads became RAG for a period of time. What we're seeing now is this return to some of the bread and butter use cases, while RAG still continues to be very important. And we're seeing people build this into agentic workflows, like all of the things you would expect from where retrieval augmented generation has evolved. But now we're seeing, because of our serverless database, because of our capability to handle massively large scale, also massively multi-tenant. That's the other part so our server, we've always had this concept of namespaces. And namespaces are essentially a hard partition where you cannot query beyond it. So it's very well suited to multi-tenant workloads. And when we say multi-tenant workloads, it's millions of tenants, not thousands or tens or hundreds. It could be up to 4, 6, 10 million tenants.
Casually.
Well, think of the B2C RAG scenarios where you need to chat with your documents, and every company becomes, or every user becomes their own RAG world. That is where these massively multi-tenant workloads come in, where you actually can very quickly spin up additional, without adding a complexity of an index and worrying about scale. Can it handle the queries per second? All of that is like you just add a namespace. It's very programmatic. One thing that really attracted me to Pinecone was their kind of focus on the developer experience, and that's where Bedrock Knowledge Base also handles namespaces in Pinecone quite well as well. So it's very easy to get going very quickly, but the ability to kind of add this very quickly was what made it successful, I think, for these large-scale multi-customer use cases. The other one that I think is interesting, which is another twist on namespaces, is we've had customers in the news space that needed to choose how much of their data got the semantic treatment, we'll say, because some organizations have news archives going back decades.
Well, and going back to, I'm sure they have videos, they have print, there's all those,
And without something that's serverless and kind of scales with customer demand, you actually run out of this. You have to make choices, like whether to do keyword, whether to do dense, whether to do semantic. And now we're seeing the ability to really quickly and in a cost-effective manner search across the entirety of an archive. Media is a very interesting use case. Obviously, all of the different use cases that are derivative of chatbots, we've seen very interesting ones. But the one that I also find interesting is seeing customers use it in ways that we didn't initially expect. So
I love that. I mean, that was a thing with AWS for so many years, but it seems like you're going through that as well.
I actually love that AWS as well. Like where you're like, we built the service to do this, but if you build it with the right level of abstraction, you build it with the right kind of limits, and people come to you and like, here's how I'm using it, and you're like,
really?
What? And then it takes us down a path of like understanding what we can do with it. So one that we're starting to see more is it started in the kind of image labeling space. But if you think about, and this is another, as you know, near and dear to my heart when I was at AWS, which is like image object detection and image detection, like labeling an image.
Like that Silicon Valley episode, right? Like, it's just the hot dog.
Very much. And so Amazon Recognition has the capability to label images, but training a custom model becomes very hard because it's actually, the Silicon Valley is a great example. Because,
I just love that.
Because they're like, we got hot dogs, and like, but there's 10 million types of food. I need you to bring me 100 examples of each type of food to train a model. That makes classification very hard. But in a vector database, you can actually do kind of a variation of zero-shot classification where you're turning the image into embeddings and processing it, and then you get a new image, you run it as embeddings, and what ones it's semantically closest to is the classification cluster, so to speak. So we're seeing people use it for kind of generative labeling and providing a step in the image labeling, image classification process.
So image labeling was always felt like a pretty heavy lift, and so it sounds like that's hopefully a thing of the past then, yes?
It is. It's a different
Getting
way
there.
to look at it, but it's been interesting to see customers bring that use case to us, and then we're like, wow, we can really do something with that. So now we're seeing customers that are like, we need to label, 50 million images. Like that's not something that's easy to do.
No.
But if you have a multimodal embedding model, again, that's where Amazon's come very helpful with the Titan embedding models. And also, we now have Cohere has launched a multimodal embedding model, 12 Labs, so there's a ton of options when it comes to multimodal embeddings. And I ton being 3, as I said out loud, but check with me this time next year. I feel like you'll see a lot more in that space, and that's where we're also laser focused on making the embeddings easier as well.
Great.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things, and this is more of a curiosity, like with your customers, you gave them the media example, right? And going through their archives, but I'm guessing they're not just using it to archive, right? Like what are they then taking all of that data that they're collecting, and how is it helping them move faster?
So yeah, that's the search capability.
Yeah.
So that's where like semantic search has always been, and this is where like Kendra's original focus was semantic search, like the ability to search beyond keywords. Like keywords are very
It's limiting.
rigid. Yeah, they're very rigid. But at the same time, like what we learned and why we launched what's now known as the sparse model is, and sparse retrieval is keywords are limiting, but very good at the thing they do.
Yeah.
And that's where you can't just kind of focus on semantic or sparse or lexical. So I would say from a semantic perspective, if you're searching for a concept, like for instance, if you're looking for a political story, say you're researching a political story, you want to find all instances where there was a certain situation, you might just look up that concept, and you'll find every variation of that concept, including other, like it might be used other terminology to describe it. So.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It really in that use case, I'm sure just helps tell a better story. It helps them do their job better when they can go back and see that so quickly of like, this is how we covered it 20 years ago or 50 years ago or whatever that looks like, and making sure that they're bringing that context in, but also the relevance of today.
Yeah, and exactly the needle in the haystack concept. There's a lot of footage that in an archive standpoint, again, putting my media hat on for just a second, finding that video, like a lot of these news stories that have come out about, like, we found this picture of 2 historical people that, like, met. It's literally someone be like, I think I remember that image. And then they're scanning their archives for, like, weeks.
Days, weeks, months, maybe.
And now you can find that image in like, 200 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The other one that we've seen is substitution use cases, like content archives. So ad tech and martech is another area that we see a lot of potential interest, which is like, say you have a piece of content that you have, and for many reasons, copyright or appropriateness or whatever, you can no longer use that piece of content. Finding the next most relevant piece of content, it usually involves a creative being like, well, what else can we put here? If you can semantically find out of the library you have what is the next best thing,
that's pretty powerful.
It narrows that down very quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing. We're just about to wrap up, so I just want to make sure to give you the last bit of time if there's anything you want to make sure people take away, that what they heard, and kind of summarize things in what's next, right? Where they can go, where they can learn more, all of that.
So one thing I've always loved about Pinecone is it's very developer friendly. So we have easy to get started. We have tons of examples, tons of notebooks. Getting an index up and running is very easy. There's no infrastructure running. It's serverless, so definitely get started. Try our newer launches with the integrated inference, the assistant, which is kind of an all-in-one RAG as a service. So happy to help anyone who wants to get started. Reach out to me.
And we're super grateful for your partnership, so thank you. And obviously, always fun having an ex-AWS person here. But no, thank you to you and to Pinecone for everything that you do with us here at AWS. And then please stay tuned. We have Ryan from Mission coming up next here on GenAI Live.
Thank you.